Warning: the following story contains descriptions of graphic violence. Viewer discretion is advised. In the quiet suburb of Scarborough, Ontario, a monster was born. Paul Bernardo, the youngest of 3 children, witnessed unspeakable acts by his father, while his mother succumbed to depression and isolation. This episode delves into the chilling origins of one of Canada's most notorious criminals. Join us as we explore the early life and twisted path of Paul Bernardo, a name that would later haunt an entire nation. This is the case of Paul Bernardo. Paul Bernardo was born in Scarborough, Ontario, near Toronto, on August 27, 1964, the third and youngest child of Kenneth Walter Bernardo and Marilyn Elizabeth Bernardo. Bernardo's father often sexually abused his older sister, Deborah, in front of other family members, and would eventually be charged with crimes involving voyeurism and pedophilia. Bernardo's mother often withdrew from her family due to depression and agoraphobia, eventually moving into the basement. Bernardo presented himself as being a happy and well-adjusted child, despite his family's dysfunction, and was an active member of the Scouts of Canada. Beneath the charming facade, however, he gradually developed pyromaniac inclinations and dark sexual fantasies, one of which involved creating a virgin farm, where he would breed virgin girls to SA. After a fight between his parents in 1981, Bernardo, then aged 16, was informed by his mother that he was the result of an extramarital affair and that Kenneth was not his biological father. Repulsed, Bernardo began to call his mother a, quote, slut and a whore. She reciprocated by calling him a bastard from hell. Later, after the growing weary of his domineering behavior, Bernardo's first girlfriend left him for one of his friends. In retaliation, Bernardo set fire to all of her belongings to which he had access. Bernardo attended Sir Wilfrid Laurier Collegiate Institute and in 1982, the University of Toronto, Scarborough, where another notorious Canadian murderer, Russell Williams, was coincidentally 2 academic years behind him. As his day job, Bernardo worked for Amway, the sales culture of which deeply affected him. Bernardo and his college friends practiced pickup techniques on young women and were fairly successful. Bernardo delighted in humiliating his dates in public and engaging in aggressive anal intercourse in bed. His relationships became increasingly violent and unstable, and he threatened to kill his parents if they disclosed the abuse. In 1986, Bernardo was served with restraining orders by 2 women after he made obscene phone calls. In October 1987, Bernardo met Carla Homolka while she was visiting Scarborough to attend a pet store conference. The two shared an immediate attraction as Homolka encouraged Bernardo's sadistic sexual behavior. Between 1987 and 1990, Bernardo committed increasingly vicious serial rapes in and around Scarborough. He attacked most of his victims after stalking them as they got off buses late in the evening. Known incidents are May 4th, 1987, essay of a 21-year-old Scarborough woman in front of her parents' house after Bernardo followed her home. May 14th, 1987, essay of a 19-year-old woman in the backyard of her parents' house. July 17th, 1987, attempted essay of a young woman. Although he beat the victim, Bernardo abandoned the attack when she fought back. September 29th, 1987, attempted essay of a 15-year-old girl. Bernardo broke into the victim's house and entered her bedroom. He jumped on her back, put his hand over her mouth, threatened her with a knife, and bruised the side of her face and bit her ear. Bernardo fled when the victim's mother entered the room and screamed. Anthony Hainmayer was wrongfully convicted of the assault in 1989 and served a 16-month prison sentence, but was exonerated after Bernardo admitted to the crime in 2006. December 16, 1987, essay of a 15-year-old girl. The next day, the Toronto Police Service issued a warning to women in Scarborough traveling alone at night, especially those riding buses. December 23, 1987, essay of a 17-year-old girl with a knife he used to threaten his victims. At this point, he began to be known as the Scarborough Rapist. April 18, 1988, attack of a 17-year-old girl. May 25, 1988, Bernardo was nearly caught by a uniformed police officer stalking out a bus shelter. Although the officer noticed him hiding under a tree and pursued him on foot, Bernardo escaped. May 30th, 1988. Essay of an 18-year-old woman in Mississauga, Ontario, about 40 kilometers southwest of Scarborough. October 4th, 1988. An attempted rape in Scarborough. Although his intended victim fought him off, Bernardo inflicted 2 stab wounds to her right thigh and buttock, which required 12 stitches. November 16th, 1988. Rape of an 18-year-old woman in the backyard of her parents' house. November 17th, 1988. Police formed a task force to capture the Scarborough Rapist. December 27th, 1988. Attempted rape with a neighbor chasing Bernardo off. June 20th, 1989. Attempted rape. The young woman fought and her screams alerted neighbors. Bernardo fled with scratches on his face. August 15th, 1989. Rape of a 22-year-old woman. November 21st, 1989. Rape of a 15-year-old girl. Bernardo saw in a bus shelter. December 22nd, 1989. Rape of a 19-year-old woman. May 26, 1990. Rape of a 19-year-old woman. The victim's vivid recollection of her attacker enabled police to create a computer composite portrait, which was released 2 days later by police and publicized in Toronto and the surrounding areas. In July 1990, 2 months after police received tips that Bernardo resembled the Scarborough Rapist composite, he was interviewed by 2 police detectives. From May to September 1990, Toronto police submitted more than 130 suspect samples for DNA testing. Investigators received 2 tips pointing to Bernardo. The first, in June, had been filed by a bank employee. The second was from Tina Smirnis, wife of one of the 3 Smirnis brothers who were among Bernardo's closest friends. Smirnis told detectives that Bernardo had been called in on a previous rape investigation, once in December 1987, but he had never been interviewed. Bernardo frequently talked about his sex life to Smirnis and said that he liked rough sex. Police interviewed Bernardo on November 20th, 1990, for 35 minutes. Bernardo voluntarily provided DNA samples for forensic testing. When the detectives asked Bernardo why he thought he was being investigated for the rapes, he admitted that he resembled the composite. Reportedly, detectives found Bernardo more credible than Smirnis. By 1990, Bernardo had lost his job as an accountant and was smuggling cigarettes across the nearby Canada-United States border. He spent long periods of time with Homolka's family, who liked him and were unaware of his criminal activities. Although he was engaged to Karla, he had become obsessed with her younger sister, Tammy, peering into her window and entering her room to masturbate while she slept. Karla helped Bernardo by breaking the windows in her sister's room, allowing him access. According to Bernardo's testimony at trial, Karla laced spaghetti sauce with crushed Valium she had stolen from her employer at an animal clinic. She served it to her sister, who soon lost consciousness. Bernardo then essayed Tammy while Karla watched. After 1 minute, Tammy regained consciousness. 6 months before their 1991 wedding, Karla stole the anesthetic agent, halothane, from the clinic. On December 23, 1990, Karla and Bernardo administered sleeping pills to 15-year-old Tammy in a rum and eggnog cocktail. When Tammy lost consciousness, Karla and Bernardo undressed her, and Karla applied halothane-soaked cloth to her sister's nose and mouth. Karla wanted to, quote, give Tammy's virginity to Bernardo for Christmas, unquote. According to her, Bernardo was disappointed that he was not Karla's first sex partner. With Tammy's parents sleeping upstairs, the couple videotaped themselves essaying Tammy in the basement. Tammy began to vomit. They tried to revive her and called 911 after hiding evidence, dressing Tammy and moving her into the bedroom. A few hours later, Tammy was pronounced dead at St. Catherine's General Hospital without regaining consciousness. Despite being observed vacuuming and washing laundry in the middle of the night, and despite a chemical burn on Tammy's face, the regional municipality of Niagara coroner and Karla's family accepted the couple's version of events. The official cause of Tammy's death was ruled accidental, the result of choking on vomit after consumption of alcohol. After Tammy's death, Bernardo and Karla videotaped themselves engaging in sexual intercourse, with Karla wearing Tammy's clothing and pretending to be her. They moved out of the Homolka house to rent a bungalow in Port Dalhousie to allow Karla's parents to grieve. In 2001, the magazine Elm Street published an article in which it implied that forensic evidence proved that Tammy's death was not an accident and that her sister had deliberately administered an overdose of halothane. The publication described Karla as a, quote, malignant narcissist, unquote, who was so incensed by her fiancé's attraction to her sister that she removed Tammy from his affections permanently. Early in the morning on June 15, 1991, while detouring through Burlington to steal license plates, Bernardo came across 14-year-old Leslie Mafi. Mafi had been locked out of her house for missed curfew after attending a friend's wake. Bernardo left his car and approached Mafi, saying that he wanted to break into a neighbor's house. Unfazed, she asked if they had any cigarettes. When Bernardo led her into his car, he blindfolded her, forced her into the car, drove her into Port Dalhousie, and informed Homolka that they had a victim. Bernardo and Homolka videotaped themselves torturing and sexually abusing Mafi while they listened to pop music. At one point, Bernardo said, quote, "You're doing a good job, Leslie, a damn good job," unquote, adding, quote, "The next 2 hours are going to determine what I do to you. Right now, you're scoring perfect," unquote. On another segment of the tape played at Bernardo's trial, the assault escalated. Mafi cried out in pain and begged Bernardo to stop. In the Crown description of the scene, he was sodomizing her while her hands were bound with twine. Mafi later told Bernardo that her blindfold seemed to be slipping, which signaled the possibility that she could identify her attackers if she lived. The following day, Bernardo claimed that Homolka fed her a lethal dose of halcyon. Homolka claimed that Bernardo strangled her. They put Mafi's body in their basement the day before Homolka's family had dinner at the house. Following the dinner party, Bernardo and Homolka decided to dismember Mafi's body and encase each part of her remains in cement. Bernardo brought a dozen bags of cement at a hardware store the following day. He kept the receipts, which were damaging at his trial. After Bernardo cut apart the body using his grandfather's circular saw, the couple made a number of trips to dump the cement blocks in Lake Gibson, approximately 18 kilometers south of Port Dalhousie. At least one of the blocks weighed 90 kilograms and was beyond their ability to sink. It lay near the shore where it was found on June 29, 1991, coincidentally on Bernardo and Homolka's wedding day. Mafi's orthodontic appliance was instrumental in identifying her. Several days before Homolka's release from prison in July 2005, Bernardo was interviewed by police and his lawyer Tony Bryant. According to Bryant, Bernardo stated that he had always intended to free the girls he and Homolka had kidnapped. However, when Mafi's blindfold fell off, Homolka was concerned that Mafi would identify Bernardo and report the couple to the police. Bernardo claimed that Homolka planned to murder Mafi by injecting an air bubble into her bloodstream, triggering an air embolism. During the after-school hours of April 16, 1992, Bernardo and Homolka drove through St. Catharines to look for potential victims. Although students were still going home, the streets were generally empty. As they passed Holy Cross Secondary School, the couple spotted 15-year-old Kristen French walking home. After they pulled into the parking lot of nearby Grace Lutheran Church, Homolka got out the car carrying a map. Bernardo attacked from behind and forced her in the front seat of the car, knife point. From the back seat, Homolka subdued French by pulling her hair. After French failed to arrive home, her parents became convinced that she met with foul play and notified police. Within 24 hours, the Niagara Regional Police Service assembled a team, searched French's after-school route, and found several witnesses who had seen the abduction from different locations. French's shoe, recovered from the parking lot, underscored the seriousness of the abduction. Over the Easter weekend, Bernardo and Homolka videotaped themselves torturing, essaying, and sodomizing French, forcing her to drink large amounts of alcohol and submit to Bernardo. At his trial, Crown Prosecutor Ray Holohan said that Bernardo always intended to kill French because she was never blindfolded and could identify her captors. The following day, Bernardo and Homolka murdered French before going to Homolka's for Easter dinner. Homolka testified at her trial that Bernardo strangled French for 7 minutes while she watched. Bernardo claimed that Homolka beat French with a rubber mallet because she tried to escape, and French was strangled with a noose around her neck, which was secured to a hope chest. Homolka then went to fix her hair. French's nude body was found on April 30th, 1992 in a ditch in Burlington, about 45 minutes from St. Catharines, and a short distance from the cemetery where Mafi is buried. She had been washed, and her hair was cut off. Although it was thought that her hair was removed as a trophy, Homolka testified that it was cut to impede identification. Homolka and Bernardo were questioned by police several times in connection with the Scarborough Rapist investigation, Homolka's death, and Bernardo's stalking of other women before French's abduction. On May 12, 1992, Bernardo was briefly interviewed by the NRP sergeant and constable, who decided that he was an unlikely suspect despite his admission that he had previously been questioned in connection to the Scarborough Rapist. 3 days later, the Green Ribbon Task Force was created to investigate the murders of Mafi and French. Bernardo and Homolka had applied to have their names legally changed to Teal, which Bernardo had taken from the serial killer in the 1988 film Criminal Law. At the end of May, John Motow, an acquaintance of Smirny's and Bernardo, reported Bernardo as a possible suspect in the murders. In December of 1992, the Center of Forensic Sciences finally began testing DNA samples provided by Bernardo 2 years earlier. On December 27th, Bernardo severely beat Homolka with a flashlight, leaving multiple bruises. Claiming that she had been in an automobile accident, Homolka returned to work on January 4th, 1993. Her skeptical co-workers called her parents, and although they rescued her the following day by physically removing her from Bernardo's house, Homolka went back to frantically search for something. Homolka's parents took her to St. Catharines General Hospital, where she gave a statement to the NRP that she was a battered spouse and filed charges against Bernardo. He was arrested and later released on his own recognizance. A friend who found Bernardo's suicide note intervened, and Homolka moved in with relatives in Brampton. 26 months after Bernardo submitted a DNA sample, Toronto police were informed that it matched that of a Scarborough rapist and immediately placed him under 24-hour surveillance. Metro Toronto Sexual Assault Squad investigators interviewed Homolka on February 9, 1993. Despite hearing her suspicions about Bernardo, she focused on his abuse of her. Later that night, Homolka told her aunt and uncle that she and Bernardo were involved in the rape and murder of Mafi and French, and that the rapes were recorded. The NRP subsequently reopened its investigation of Tammy Homolka's death. 2 days later, Homolka met with Niagara Falls lawyer George Walker, who sought legal immunity from Crown Prosecutor Hallahan in exchange for her cooperation. She was also placed under 24-hour surveillance. The couple's name change was approved on February 13, 1993. The next day, Walker met with Crown Criminal Law Office Director Murray Segal. After Walker told Segal about the videotapes, Segal advised him that due to Homolka's involvement in the crimes, full immunity was not a possibility. On February 17th, detectives arrested Bernardo on several charges and obtained a search warrant. Because his link to the murders was weak, the warrant was limited. No evidence which was not expected and documented in the warrant could be removed from his property, and all videotapes found by police had to be viewed in the house. Damage had to be kept to a minimum. Police could not tear down walls looking for the tapes. The search of the house, including updated warrants, lasted 71 days, and the only tape found by police had a brief segment of Homolka's performing oral sex on Jane Doe. During a call from jail, Bernardo told his lawyer, Ken Murray, that the rape videos were hidden in a ceiling light fixture in the upstairs bathroom. Murray found the tapes and hid them from investigators. After Murray resigned as Bernardo's lawyer, his new attorney, John Rosen, turned the tapes over to police. On May 5th, Walker was informed that the government was offering Homolka a plea bargain of 12 years imprisonment, which she had 1 week to accept. If she declined, the government would charge her with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of second-degree murder, and other crimes. Walker accepted the offer, and Homolka later agreed to it. On May 14th, Homolka's plea bargain was finalized, and she began giving statements to police investigators. She told police that Bernardo boasted that he had raped as many as 30 women, twice as many as the police suspected. Citing the need to protect Bernardo's right to a fair trial, a publication ban was imposed on Homolka's preliminary inquiry. The Crown had applied for the ban, which was imposed on July 5th by Francis Kovacs, of the Ontario Court of Justice. Through her lawyers, Homolka supported the ban. Bernardo's lawyers argued that he would be prejudged by the ban, since Homolka had been portrayed as his victim. 4 media outlets and 1 author also opposed the ban. Some lawyers argued that rumors could damage the future trial process more than publication of evidence. In February of 1994, Homolka divorced Bernardo. Public access to the internet effectively nullified the court's order, as did proximity to the U.S.-Canadian border. American journalists, not subject to the publication ban, published details of Homolka's testimony, which were distributed by electronic ban breakers. Newspapers in Buffalo, Detroit, Washington, D.C., New York City, and the United Kingdom, as well as radio and television stations close to the border, divulged the details. Canadians brought copies of the Buffalo News across the border, prompting orders to the NRP to arrest all those with more than 1 copy at the border. Extra copies were confiscated. Copies of other newspapers, including the New York Times, were turned back at the border or not accepted by distributors in Ontario. Gordon Dom, a retired police officer who defied the publication ban by distributing details from foreign media, was convicted of 2 counts of contempt of court. Bernardo was tried for the murders of French and Mafi in 1995, and his trial included detailed testimony from Homolka and videotapes of the rapes. Bernardo testified that the deaths were accidental, later claiming that Homolka was the actual killer. On September 1st, 1995, Bernardo was convicted of a number of offenses, including 2 first-degree murders and 2 aggravated sexual assaults, and sentenced to life in prison without parole for at least 25 years. He was designated a dangerous offender, making him unlikely to ever be released. Homolka's plea bargain was criticized by many Canadians since Bernardo's first defense lawyer, Ken Murray, had withheld the videotapes exposing Homolka's culpability for 17 months. The videotapes were considered crucial evidence, and prosecutors said that they would never have agreed to the plea bargain if they had seen them. Murray was later acquitted of obstruction of justice and faced a disciplinary hearing by Law Society of Upper Canada. Although Bernardo was kept in a segregation unit at Kingston Penitentiary for his own safety, he was attacked and harassed. He was punched in the face by another inmate when he returned from the shower in 1996. In June 1999, 5 convicts tried to storm his segregation range, and a riot squad used gas to disperse them. On February 21, 2006, the Toronto Star reported that Bernardo had admitted sexually assaulting at least 10 other women in attacks not previously attributed to him. Authorities suspected Bernardo in other crimes, including a string of rapes in Amherst, New York, and the drowning of Terry Anderson in St. Catharines. But he has never acknowledged his involvement. His lawyer, Anthony G. Bryan, reportedly forwarded the information to legal authorities in November 2005. In 2006, Bernardo gave a prison interview in which he claimed that he had reformed and would make a good parole candidate. He became eligible to petition a jury for early parole in 2008 under the Faint Hope Clause, since he committed multiple murders before the 1997 Criminal Code Amendment, but did not do so. In 2015, Bernardo applied for a day parole in Toronto. According to the victim's lawyer, Tim Danson, it is unlikely that Bernardo will ever be released in any capacity due to his dangerous offender status. In September 2013, Bernardo was transferred to Millhaven Institution in Bath, where he was reportedly segregated from other inmates. In November 2015, Bernardo self-published A Mad World Order, a violent, fictional 631-page ebook on Amazon. By November 15th, the book reportedly an Amazon bestseller, but was removed from the website due to a public outcry. In October 2018, Bernardo had been set to go to trial for possession of a shank. However, the prosecution dropped the charges due to their determination that there was no reasonable probability of conviction. Bernardo became eligible for parole in February 2018. On October 17th of that year, he was denied day and full parole by the Parole Board of Canada. His next parole hearing took place on June 22, 2021. It only took 1 hour of deliberation by the preceding judge for his application to be turned down. In May 2023, after spending a decade at Millhaven Institution, Bernardo was transferred to La Macasa Institution, a medium security facility in Quebec, where he will continue to serve his indeterminate sentence. The transfer caused controversy, and initially the reason for the transfer was not provided to the public. Bernardo had successfully applied to be moved there. In light of the scandal and dismay raised by the transfer on June 5, 2023, Correctional Service Canada announced it was to review the decision, and on July 20th, Commissioner Ann Kelly explained in a 30-minute press conference that the review board found the transfer to be sound in view of the passage of Bill C-83, an act to amend the Correction and Conditional Release Act, and another act. On June 26, 2023, Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino was dropped from the cabinet and replaced by Dominic LeBlanc during a cabinet shuffle with the media, attributing his demotion and to the controversy around the Bernardo transfer. The day after LeBlanc was installed, the Globe and Mail wrote an article covering his opinion that the legislation was inconsequential, while the leader of the opposition said that this was an example of the soft-on-crime policies of the Trudeau government. On March 6, 2024, MP Frank Caputo learned there was an inmate hockey rink on the premises of La Macasa. Caputo said the cherry on top was seeing this beautiful gymnasium, and next to it is a weight room, much nicer than 95% of Canadians have access to. Bernardo's next parole hearing was on November 26, 2024. His victims' families were initially barred from attending the hearing in person because of safety concerns, but that decision was reversed by the parole board. Bernardo was denied parole for a third time by the Parole Board of Canada. Paul Bernardo remains incarcerated. For more content, like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thank you.